We've been out of practice so long that I messed up the intro on the first time, so we had to re-record. But this is 6 weeks after the last time that we talked to you guys. So the last episode was in late August, and now it's October 6th. And yeah, we took a break from podcasting, which was pretty nice, just to get back to America and catch up with family and see friends and everything.
It was probably a longer break than we initially intended.
It was.
And part of it was like we were hoping maybe our microphones would show up because we don't have them, so we're still recording just on our like handheld recorder.
Yeah, sorry about the quality still.
Yeah, because the microphones are maybe in the United States at a port, or they're maybe in a boat still coming across the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
But we're doing that, and it's kind of nice because it's almost a full circle situation because we're sitting in the house that we recorded our very first episode in, but instead of being in our closet, we're just in the bedroom.
Yeah, I was kind of putting off making this podcast because so many things happened, and then our plans changed a lot, and I didn't really know like where to even begin, but I didn't want to leave people hanging. And after our last podcast was all the way back in the Kanazawa hotel, and some kind listeners even emailed in to like check on us for proof of life, I guess, because it had been a while. So yeah, this episode is going to be about where we are now, which Zeb kind of hinted at. Reverse culture shock of moving from Japan, and then our changing plans about where we're moving next, among some other things. So first of all, where are we now? We talked last episode about flying back to North Carolina to spend more time with family and kind of enjoy that in-between time, and we're still here.
Yeah, still in North Carolina.
Which brings us to the other question of why aren't we in the Netherlands? So, I don't know, where do you want to begin with that? We had a flight for September, so that was...
Yeah, I don't know if you have been listening. You might remember we talked about moving to the Netherlands on the DAF visa and how I had a flight booked for September, which was originally going to be only about 4 weeks after our return to the United States.
Yeah, and once we got here, we kind of were like, that is a bit short.
Well,
so
even before we left Japan, we had rescheduled the flight to be October, and it was going to be October 21st. Mm. And so we kind of already knew before we were leaving Japan that 4 weeks was probably not going to be enough time to kind of see everyone we wanted to see and like do everything we wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And so we had rescheduled it for October, but now currently we actually just have flight credits sitting in our online.
Well, so we started wondering, like, did we really have the same excitement about another international move? And then combining those hesitations with the difficulty we were having in finding housing. And so we did decide to cancel our flight altogether and stay here in the U.S. instead. And so that was a decision that I was personally agonizing over for a really long time. And now I'm glad that we made that choice, but we talked about what the DAFT visa was previously, and that's still an awful acronym, but it stands for Dutch-American Friendship Treaty Visa. And so we're going to move to the Netherlands. I was going to apply for the visa with like a freelance marketing and media, small business, air quotes. And then Zeb would be able to apply for any EU job once our visa got approved, but you can't start the process until you have a house. So that was the really big hang up, that we weren't able to secure like a rental in time.
Yeah, I don't think we were, if you remember us talking about it, I don't think we were necessarily like naive about our situation that we were going to put ourselves in. I think we were kind of, at that point, like prepared to be in kind of this limbo while we were getting the visa set up. And we talked about how we had enough savings, and it just became, I guess at that time we felt comfortable making the gamble to move to the Netherlands. But then the more we actually started kind of investigating the situation and looking at it, it became more of an actual gamble that we weren't sure if we'd be able to put all the pieces in place to make it like a successful move.
Like to put all of our savings on the line kind of was scary, but...
And part of that is that the Netherlands, if you don't know or you're not sure what's going on in the Netherlands, they're kind of experiencing their own housing shortage. And so it's particularly hard right now to find an apartment. And so there are a few like hoops that you have to jump through, and it became
We
increasingly difficult.
I mean, we knew that going in, but I personally didn't realize that it extended like all over the Netherlands. I thought that, well, we were looking in the southern region, and I thought, oh, it's more rural. We're not even trying to look anywhere close to Amsterdam or anywhere over there. So I thought, oh, it'll be fine. And if we can't find anything, we'll just hire one of the expat services where you pay them a fee and they help you find housing. And the 5 that we reached out to, 3 didn't get back to us and 2 said they weren't accepting new applicants just because there's too many people wanting housing.
Yeah, I think they said it was just too difficult to like get people into houses. And part of that came down to like why it became more of a gamble, and it was the fact that there is housing available if your budget is large enough.
Mm-hmm.
But it kind of came down to like, we thought 1,500 euros a month was a pretty reasonable budget.
And that was hard to find.
Yeah, and it became kind of apparent that like, oh, we might actually need to spend more than that. And so it kind of like our costs started adding up more quickly than we originally anticipated. And then there were some other things like starting to like do the housing search and actually look for houses. You know, we signed up to all these websites and we were like going through this whole process, and it was just kind of, I don't know, very like taxing, and it just kind of snowballed into this situation where I was like, oof, like maybe this is like a little bit scarier than we had anticipated. And then
yeah, I don't want to complain about, I mean, it was exciting to have the possibility of even looking into that and everything, but yeah, we did kind of start feeling like, wouldn't it be cozy to just go to America and be close to family again and not worry about visas and immediately be able to start working and not ever have any concern about future problems with visas? Like, we could just do whatever we wanted for work and never have to do paperwork just to live somewhere.
Yeah, and I think in hindsight too, if I look at like the situation we were in at the time that we decided to extend our stay in America, it was kind of during that long road trip, and I think it was just a lot of travel, and I think we were kind of all over the place, and we like really packed a lot into that, and so that kind of helped me decide, oh, it would be nice to extend our time in America, because I was not like totally burned out on travel, but we had done a lot, and we had seen a lot, and I was kind of ready to at least just be somewhere and relax for a little bit.
Somewhere familiar.
Yeah, and I knew that 4 weeks in America wasn't gonna do it, because it would be like, we'd probably land, we'd have like a stressful week, seeing family, saying hello to everyone, and then maybe in between we'd have like a week or 2 where we could relax, and then we'd have another stressful week of like, okay, now we need to pack everything up and get on the plane.
Yeah, which is exciting in some ways, but yeah, in other ways I kind of was like, I don't know if I'm excited anymore or if I just want to like calm down. But in a lot of ways I had, or like kind of still have, some weird embarrassment around telling people that we were going to go to the Netherlands and then do this big exciting thing, only to decide that actually no, we're just going to like be back in close to my hometown. And I don't know why. I mean, there's nothing wrong with moving back to your hometown, and Zeb doesn't have any of this weird feeling. But
I don't think I have as much as you do, because I think I don't know. I mean, I don't think that I don't think you care a lot about what other people think about you in like a negative way.
More than I should.
But I think you do care a bit more than I do. And I don't know, I think I was definitely one of those kids that when I was young, I hated the idea of like living in my hometown, and I couldn't wait to leave. And now that I'm older, I can like look at my hometown and kind of see the positives and see why it's a good place to raise a family, and it's a good place to live, and it's comfortable. Like, I personally might not want to live in my hometown, but now I'm more comfortable with the idea of if I had to live there. But I think
small town America.
Yeah, just small town America. But I think where we are now it has so many positives. And then I think a big thing, if I'm like honest, is maybe taking advantage of like the community that was here. That we really were part of the community before we left. And it was really nice to come back, and because we extended our stay, I was able to do some bike races and like reconnect with a bunch of friends. And it really did feel like coming back home, because even going to those bike races, there were so many people that said hello and like mentioned, you know, oh, like how was Japan, and like how long are you back? And even people that like I didn't really expect, like the promoter for both the races, like came up and asked me, you know, how have things been, and like, oh, like what was going on.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was just kind of, I don't know, it felt like we were coming home, which I guess because we did, but.
I mean, I guess it's too, like, presumptive of me or like too much ego for me to even think that people care. Like, so I guess I didn't want to feel like I just gave up or like I just settled. But like the more that we have decided to stay and thought about that, the more I'm happy with that decision, and it does feel right. Like I don't have the same. It was exciting to be in the Netherlands to pursue that, but then I also would get this like followed by anxiety feeling of like, what if it doesn't work, and what if I hate it, and what if we put all of our savings and then we're really far away from family for no reason.
Yeah.
And we were thinking about, well, what do we want? And we wanted to be somewhere that we could walk to the grocery store and to the library and to restaurants, kind of like in Uchinada, somewhere that we could bike places, and somewhere relatively close to a big city like Kanazawa. And we found that. And so, yeah, I'm pretty happy that we'll still be able to ride bikes. I'll be able to mountain bike again, which I'm excited about. We were reunited with our cats. Shout out to my sister who took care of them for 2 years.
Yeah, it was very nice.
Yeah.
And you might even hear them in this episode because they're prowling in the adjacent room. And one of them was even in the box that we're recording on top of, and we didn't know.
Yeah. We were looking everywhere for him, and he was inside this box, so I was looking under the bed, and then all of a sudden the box on the bed moved, and he like popped out of it.
Yeah. So that's like, I don't know. There are a lot of positives to being back, but there are certainly a lot of things that we miss about being in Japan.
Yeah. So now for like the fun part about reminiscing on that first day or week even of what it was like returning from Japan. And I guess if you remember back in the last episode, we were talking about how unfortunately we both had to take different flights to get back to America.
Yeah.
And so we both had our individual experiences of like returning to America. And I think because I was alone, I noticed a lot more things than if we had just been like chatting or together. I kind of took notes on my notes app on my phone, So I don't know where to start, but like, I guess what was kind of the makeup of people on your flight?
I mean, it was all, I'm assuming it was all Americans.
Oh, so it was mostly like other English-speaking American accent people?
Yeah, actually, I did sit next to a Japanese couple, and there were a few Japanese men, and in my head, they were probably off to like a business trip because they didn't seem like they were on vacation. They seemed,
oh, really?
The couple seemed like they were maybe going on vacation. And then the group of men that I kept kind of like bumping into in different places in the airports, they seemed like they were on a business trip. But I think other than them, it was like mostly Americans, I guess.
Mine was a lot of young people, both college age people, but also a lot of younger like high school kids. And a lot of them were coming back from study abroads and stuff. There were a lot of people who were on vacation, and I could only tell because like they were talking about things that they had done on vacation, and then they also had, like the souvenir bags from like Tokyo Disney, like things where it's kind of like, oh, that seems obvious that you're on, like I don't know that why you would save a Tokyo Disney bag other than we just came back from Disney. That's
true. I saw more people in the airport before I boarded my flight that had very, like stuff from like the Pokemon Center and like plushies.
Which maybe they're just gifts,
Maybe.
But it was kind of nice because I sat next to another American girl, but she was returning from a study abroad where she had been living in Japan for 6 months or something, and it wasn't her first time being there, so it was kind of nice to talk to her about the mixed feelings of, I don't know, she kind of had the same look when she was like, oh, are you returning from a trip? And I was like, no, and she was like, oh, me neither, and then we kind of talked about the mixed feelings of leaving somewhere you really liked and going back to somewhere you really liked, and it was kind of like bittersweet about, I'm excited to see family, but it's kind of hard to leave, like I'm not just leaving a trip,
Yeah.
So it was nice to talk to her. And then, I don't know why I wrote this on my notes app, I guess it really made an impression, but the second meal that we had on the plane had this real cheese cube, and it was one of the first, like, very sharp cheddar cheeses that I'd had in a long time.
Yeah. It has been really nice eating cheese with flavor instead of this miscellaneous cheese-like product that kind of does what cheese does, but it doesn't really have the flavor of cheese. That's been really nice.
But the flight was kind of uneventful, luckily. But once we landed, the airport had so many differences that were so, like, noticeable to me that I guess I had forgotten about. So, for example, the bathrooms it's not, I guess it's kind of a joke that American bathrooms are much worse than Japanese bathrooms. Like, there's gaps in the stalls. They're typically not as, like, large or clean or readily available. And that was the case. Like, I had to wait in line, and then the bathroom stall had to, like, prop a suitcase up against it to keep the door closed. And that's, like, an extreme
There
thing.
wasn't, like, a lock on your door?
It was broken,
Oh.
and there were so many people that I was like, I'll just go in this one.
That's
but
funny.
the main thing I noticed was that there was a bathroom attendant, you know? And that is, like, not... At least there would be bathroom attendants in Japan, but they're more people that are just cleaning. And her whole job was, I guess, to make sure it was stocked, but she kind of was like, welcome, come on in, this one's open, like, how's your flight? You know, like, she was, like, chatting, and I was like, oh. Like, she was so friendly, but I was just so shocked that I was like, oh, you're talking to me, like, I'm just trying to go to the bathroom, and we're, like, having a heart-to-heart here. And then when I was thinking about that, I was like, that's kind of nice that she's so outgoing and friendly, and I'm leaving, and behind me I see this woman give her a tip, and I was like, oh, of course, like, I forgot that there's tip culture in Japan, I mean, in America, because in Japan there's no tipping. And then I was like...
I think that's a little extreme, though. I don't think you would normally...
Well, then I got all self-conscious that I was like, and was I supposed to, like, give her a tip? And, like, have I offended anybody yet about, like, I don't know. It just, that was something that I was like, oh, yeah, I have to remember to tip people in America again.
Yeah, I guess certain, like, service industries. And, of course, we haven't really eaten out at a lot of restaurants. So we thankfully haven't really had to tip much.
Yeah. But the tips in restaurants are easy because you just can write it on the receipt, you know? You don't have to have cash. But I rarely have cash just to, like, hand somebody a tip.
Yeah, I think that it is... You kind of forget, like, how Americans in general tend to wear their, like, hearts on their sleeves a little bit more. That even in public, like, people you don't know are pretty quick to kind of have this, like, emotional conversation with you, or, like, tell you how their day's going, or they'll just be, like, upset, or maybe they're just really happy. Where typically, you know, stereotypically Japanese people are a little more, like, reserved and not... I mean, you would definitely see, you know, a group of friends having, like, a really good time, but then when you're on, like, public transportation or something, it's all, like, very
quiet. No one's trying to stand out or, like, be too loud or anything.
Yeah, but Americans, they'll, like, sometimes they will just talk to you.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, whoa. Like,
yeah. I remember being in the line, you know, to get your passport stamped or whatever, the intake, once we had landed in Atlanta. And it was so loud, and it was just kind of a... Like, I felt bad that I was overhearing everyone's conversation, because in Japan, at least in Kanazawa, there's not a lot of, like, English conversations that are happening. And, of course, in Atlanta, in the Atlanta airport, it's a ton of English conversations at a relatively much louder volume. And so it was kind of distracting that I was, like... I felt like I was eavesdropping on everybody's, like, conversations, because I couldn't help but hear them talk loudly.
I would
about,
say,
like,
that most people don't care.
No,
I think
they
most
didn't
Americans,
care.
like, they wouldn't care if you ever heard
They
their
were just, like,
conversation.
talking really loudly on the phone with their boyfriends, or, like, talking, like, next to them about, like, drama at work, and I was like, this is so, like, these are kind of, like, intimate conversations, but they don't care that they're being overheard.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of, like, distracting to be back somewhere where I could understand everyone fully. And yeah.
It is really nice. There is, like, something nice about being in a culture that maybe you don't always agree with everything and how it's, like, how everything's done, but you know how to navigate it very easily. Like, I don't really... So you were talking about, like, the tip culture, so that's, like, something, I guess, like, you do have to think about. But for the most part, I'm in a any situation in America, I generally know how to act depending on the situation. Like, sometimes in Japan, I would get caught in a situation where I was like, oh, like, I really had to process what was going on and think
like,
about...
what's everybody else doing?
Yeah, and think about how I'm supposed to act and...
What's the appropriate response here?
Yeah, what should I be doing? But in America, I just kind of... It's very, like, second nature. I just kind of know, like, oh, this is what it's going to be like here, and, like, when I go in there, it's going to be like this. I don't know, that is very comforting.
Yeah.
That we don't have to worry as much about social norms because we understand them.
Yeah, that's true. I also appreciated not standing out just based on my looks. Like, once I was in the line, the intake line, I guess, everybody looks like they were all different kinds of people in line. It wasn't just a lot of Japanese people and then me.
Yeah.
Which it is not a bad thing, but sometimes I don't like standing out so much, just being so obviously not from there.
Yeah.
And so this was kind of nice to be like, oh, I can just blend in. Like, no one is staring at me wondering what I'm doing here or wondering if I will be able to respond to them or anything.
Yeah.
It was just kind of like, I'm in line too.
Yeah, it's very nice just being, more, you blend in a little bit more. And this is a total aside. I was like, you talking about hearing English conversations, but we had this crazy day. So we ended up in a Walmart, and I really appreciated, kind of like in a weird way, how much, I thought it was interesting how much Spanish was being spoken in the Walmart. But to me, like, maybe before I wouldn't have really noticed it or not really cared. But when we were in there the other day, I just really appreciated it because, I don't know, it was like nice to hear different languages, which in Japan it's like usually Japanese, or sometimes you'd overhear some English.
Well, that was because we lived in a little bit more rural area, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, I think in Tokyo, maybe there would be multiple languages, just in the city.
Yeah, maybe.
So.
But it was just funny being like, but there were like multiple different, groups speaking Spanish. And then you'd walk down one aisle and then like, oh, they're like speaking English. Yeah. Not that it's like a multicultural hub, but it was just like interesting.
Yeah, rural North Carolina is not really that multicultural. No. But I mean, I guess it is nice to not just be one thing.
Yeah, it was kind of like a glimpse into a community where like, oh, so there are other cultures like coexisting in this one small town, relatively small town.
It was like kind of a weird emotional flight back though, because you're leaving a place that has been home for a couple years, that will probably not be able to live in Japan again. I mean, never say never, I guess, but it's hard to get a visa.
I would say that I'm over never. Oh. I'm over like saying never, because I feel like we've been lucky enough that we've done and experienced a lot of things that I keep thinking, oh, that's the last time we'll ever do that. Yeah. And then we end up doing it again. And so I feel like, for the next 3 to 5 years, we are likely not going to be living in Japan.
Right. Yeah, I mean, who knows what the future holds, I guess. So I don't want to count anything out or act like we haven't already been lucky to have a lot of experiences. But, so I don't know back to where I was going with that is that when I was leaving, it was kind of like, wow, like, that was such a crazy 2 years. A lot of people are leaving just like 2-week trips. And so it's different emotions, when you're just like leaving a trip that was really cool and impactful, or leaving a home that you don't know when you'll go back to. And so it was just kind of like, and I was alone, so I was just like thinking a lot to myself. And then I get finally in this line to the place where they stamp your passport, and since it's my home passport, they don't really like ask a lot of questions. They just kind of were like, can I have your passport? And then he was kind of making small talk, I guess, as he like looked up my info, and he was like, where are you coming from? And I said Japan, and he was like, oh, did you have fun? And I was like, yeah. Like, I didn't really know how to reply to that, like how to sum up 2 years of life.
Yeah.
So I just was like, yeah, I had fun. Yeah. And he was like, okay, great, like, welcome back. And I was like, thanks, I mean, he didn't mean anything by it, but it just was kind of funny that it doesn't feel like I'm leaving a home. In a lot of ways, people were like, oh, welcome back, like, from your trip. But, and he didn't mean anything by it. It just was a funny question to get.
Yeah. And I do understand it's kind of fun, because when you're coming back from a trip, you're obviously, like, riding this high. And Japan it's not unique in this way, but a lot of people go to Japan and, they kind of have this quasi, like, life-altering experience where they're like, Japan was the greatest thing ever, and they're kind of riding this, like, mega high.
It's so like, different from a lot of Western countries.
Yeah, but then when we were leaving, I was, like, riding a bit of a high about, like, living in Japan, but then also I was kind of, like, a little, like, my morning, like, commute to get to the airport was, like, a little frustrating, because there were some, like, rules and regulations that were unclear, and no one was willing to explain them. And so I kind of had, like, this funny moment where there were so many things I was looking forward to, and then a little upset about, like, well, in Japan, it's, like, always this way, and it's kind of, like, frustrating. So it was very interesting, to have, like, a bit of a push and pull scenario. Like, part of me was ready. I was just like, yeah, I want to be back in America. And then part of me was like, oh, yeah, that's going to be, yeah, I'm really gonna miss that. So.
Yeah. Yeah, getting on the last Shinkansen after we finished the last podcast and then I got on the train, hearing the like train melody for the last time was kind of hard.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll be back and I'll hear the train melody again, but I was
yeah,
like,
I'm sure we'll go visit. Yeah.
My train. So, yeah, I do. Do you miss any food? Because I know when we first arrived, I was like, I can't wait to eat biscuits, like Southern biscuits and Cajun fries and waffles that aren't sweet.
Yeah.
And grits.
Like, do I miss any food from Japan?
Yeah, now that we've been eating a bunch of like the American food that we missed for a while.
So I would maybe have a different answer if we hadn't been on that road trip, but we were on that road trip and we heavily relied on convenience stores and eating out. So I really feel like over that like 3-week time period,
you ate all the onigiri you wanted.
Yeah, by the end I was like kind of over convenience store food, which I know that a lot of people, that's like their holy grail in Japan. Mm-hmm. And I think for me there was a point too where that was like my favorite meal was to like get off work and we'd, go down to the convenience store and like pick out what we wanted and get our like, dessert, snacks. But by the end of that road trip I was just so like over getting like convenience store bentos. And so I don't think there's anything I immediately miss, but that's also offset by the fact that we've been eating such good food in America. That
my mom is a good cook. Your mom is too, so.
Yeah, we've had like really good food ever since we've been back. And I know some people were kind of like hating on like the American diet and like joking about like, oh, like welcome back to the land of like
McDonald's.
Bad food. And I feel bad though because we've eaten really good food for basically like every meal.
Like salad bars.
Like weeks.
There's no salad bar. Well, okay, I can't say blanket statements like that, but it was very hard for me to find a salad bar in the Kanazawa area where we lived, where I could like get a plate and there was a bar of salad options that I was used to.
Yeah,
so that's
like an
something
overwhelming
that I
amount of options. Yeah. Like, do you want lettuce or cabbage or spinach?
And you definitely don't think of, when you think of American food, salad's not the first thing that comes to mind, but it has been easier for me to get salads in America than Japan.
Americans do salad really well.
We also do a lot of fried foods, and I've definitely been eating a lot of that, but yeah.
But so does Japan. So I know for a fact, like, there will come a time where I'm going to be really craving, like, a food from Japan. And it'd probably be something like sushi or udon.
I do miss, like, the readily available and affordability of the sushi in Japan. But
yeah, because I know that like
it's a pretty niche thing.
Yeah.
Like we wouldn't eat that, not niche, but we just wouldn't eat that every day.
Yeah, and again, like right before we left, we went to that conveyor belt sushi restaurant in Kanazawa Station, and I ate so much sushi. So I feel like I really kind of indulged, and then I was like, okay, I'm ready. But I know that it'll be hard because when it comes to something that I'm craving, it will be, we could probably make an equivalent, but it won't be exactly the same.
The things that I've been missing are less the like I thought I was going to really miss onigiri and stuff at the convenience store, but the things that have been more of a bummer are things that we would cook, and I'm not a great Japanese food cook, but just the amount of like rice options in America is so low, and so it was really hard for me to find just even rice to make sushi with. We had to go to a couple different stores, and I think that there's an Asian grocery store that I need to go to get some rice next time.
And if we really wanted to, my friend Taka, who's from Tokyo, when he was in Boone, he used to drive to, I think, Charlotte. And apparently Charlotte has like
there's
a pretty
really
phenomenal Asian market, and he would go there and he would buy like Japanese ingredients to cook. Yeah,
maybe we should go there. But I was trying to make some food for my family one night, and we were going to make okonomiyaki and some just like quick sushi, like the hand rolls, not nigiri, because I didn't want to buy the quality of fish here in the mountains of North Carolina for that. But I couldn't find nori, and I couldn't find good rice, and those are like the two main things you need for hand rolls. So I found them, but they weren't good enough quality. So it was just harder to make the food for my family. And they were like, this is really good. And I was like, oh, it could have been so much better if like the rice actually stuck together and the nori was actually crisp. But so things like that. And I brought a bag, like a little packet of furikake, like rice sprinkles, kind of.
It's like rice seasoning.
Yeah, and I'm almost out of that, and I'm gonna miss that when it's gone. I already looked up how I can buy it online, and I'm not sure how yet.
We'll just have to go to Charlotte.
Yeah.
I do think that I probably will not be going unless like it's highly recommended or we happen to like know someone that knows the like owner. I don't think I'll be going to a Japanese restaurant in America anytime soon.
Not even just to see like what kind of food they're selling?
No, because I know what they got because we used to eat there. And like I think that we could cook
maybe
something that we would enjoy more that's more true to what we were eating in Japan, like at home.
I don't know. I think that there's a lot of cities in America that have high quality.
But that's what I'm saying. Like if it's highly recommended, or it's like if we were in like New York City or like Washington D.C.,
but not rural North Carolina.
Yeah, not. I mean, I'm sure like Asheville does have a pretty authentic, like Japanese type restaurant. But then the price that we would pay, like we could go to the Asian market and probably buy the the ingredients we wanted.
Maybe. I gotta practice my cooking skills then.
Yeah, so definitely some food stuff, and like I guess like the spontaneity of like food in restaurants is like we would walk around town and we would maybe go to a soba place, we'd maybe go to an udon place, and obviously like where we are now, we'd go to a Japanese restaurant, which would kind of have like hodgepodge mix of like Japanese culture food. And so I'll miss kind of the specialty restaurants in Japan, like that made it a little bit different. Because I don't think, I mean, it's not in our area. I don't think there's like a restaurant that's just like a sushi restaurant. It would be a Japanese restaurant.
And they'd have like noodles and they would have sushi. And maybe so. Yeah, there's not going to be like just one soba restaurant with all they have on the menu is like the soba set of the day. But, that's okay. We can go back to Japan and visit. It was really nice when my parents picked me up from the airport, and I got in the back of the car. First of all, it felt huge. It was just, my parents have a Suburban, and so...
That's a pretty huge car.
It is a huge car, but
especially... even by American standards.
Especially coming back from, like, our K car, I was like, wow, this car is huge. And my parents were like, what are you talking about? And then they were like, oh, we brought some watermelon because it was August. And they were like, do you want some? And it was midnight because they very nicely picked me up from like my midnight landing. And I was like, yes, I would love some watermelon because because it's so expensive. Fruit is so expensive in Japan. And they had this Tupperware container of it. And I think I ate the whole thing on the way home. And they were like, we can get some more fruit. And I was like, yes, please. Like, I'm so excited about fruit.
That's probably like another thing that's not stereotypically American. Like in Japan, like they would tell you, oh, we have the best fruit in the world, and certainly they have the most expensive fruit in the world,
so some of it might be the best.
But I think arguably Americans, we also do fruit pretty well. Like, and then we have peaches
depending on what fruit, but
the watermelon. We have a lot of good seasonal fruit and it's affordable. So.
But I guess speaking of North Carolina, you might have heard about North Carolina a lot on the news recently because Hurricane Helene, you might have heard about the Hurricane Helene aftermath. And so it was a complete surprise about how much damage that this hurricane actually caused. We knew it was coming. We knew it was going to like make landfall in Florida and then make its way up directly over western North Carolina, over like Asheville. But nobody knew that the amount of water it was going to dump on this area, and then that would cause the rivers, they couldn't handle all that water, and so they flooded at least 20 feet over in some places, which, like the French Broad River in Asheville, the record high in the 1916 flood was like 23 feet, and that got broken a couple weeks ago. And
part of the issue was we had pretty heavy rainfall in the day or two like leading up to when the hurricane actually made like its way over western North Carolina. So it's kind of like a bit of like a perfect storm scenario. And then also the hurricane like strengthened rapidly. I think it made landfall as like a category 4. And that it went from a category 1 to a 4 in like one day or something. So it was kind of like a wild weather scenario.
Yeah, it knocked out, the floodwaters knocked out entire towns because, I mean, we're in the Appalachian Mountains. We don't get hurricanes. And
Yeah, we get a lot of rain, but not all at once like that.
and so places flooded that weren't in floodplains. Like, they were near rivers and streams, but nowhere that they would think that their house would be swept away. And that happened. Like, Chimney Rock is a small town nearby that got completely wiped off. They're right next to a river. And Hot Springs and Marshall, a lot of these smaller towns, because Asheville is a really large town, and especially the River Arts District, that got really demolished. The French Broad River and the Swananoa Rivers both came over their banks significantly. So there was a lot of damage to Asheville, but then a lot of the smaller towns don't get as much, I guess, notability on the news because everybody knows where Asheville is.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's been really heartbreaking this past couple weeks.
Yeah, and we're kind of finally, like, I guess us personally are kind of like reaching, like so this was a little over a week ago, and I'm finally, I've been working since we've been back, and I'm finally about to go back to work tomorrow, and we finally got our power and internet and all that stuff back. Thankfully, we were on well water, so we didn't lose water.
Yeah, but we didn't have it nearly as bad as most people. So,
yeah.
I mean, we were super lucky that there was very minimal damage to my parents' property where we're staying, and everyone's safe. And yeah, I feel really lucky, and I feel doubly lucky. I guess some people would think, if you had an earthquake in the same year as a hurricane, that's unlucky. But I think that we have been so lucky this year because a lot of the similarities with the feelings of like helplessness and I don't know, just being scared at the like magnitude of nature and the like scariness of how you can never predict or control nature. Those feelings came back, I guess, the same way that they did from the Noto earthquake for me.
Yeah.
But in both cases, like the Noto earthquake was scarier in my opinion because it was more unpredictable and we were also more alone feeling. We just weren't close to my family.
Yeah, and in that scenario, we really didn't know what to do. I mean, we had these pamphlets that were like, you go to your shelter, and then there were kind of like these steps that you could take. But with the earthquake,
in both cases, we were so fortunate that we didn't have very much damage. So
yeah. It was just different with the earthquake because there was the uncertainty afterwards of like, will there be aftershocks or was this the only event or will there be another one? And it was kind of like, after the hurricane passed through, the hurricane leaves. And in some areas, floodwater continues to rise because the water's like entering, the zone where like the river flows through. But once the hurricane's gone, it's kind of like, oh, the weather is really nice and it's like a beautiful day. And like, you're not like, you don't have this existential dread about
like every time the earth shakes,
is
this another big one?
Yeah, or like, will the hurricane turn around and will it come back? Because like, well, it doesn't do that. And so, but it was like really interesting because we shared the similarity of like the unknown, because where we are, it's really weird. So of course there was no internet, and then there was also no cell service.
The cell towers got knocked out. So we didn't know the extent of the damage for like 3 days.
Like sometimes we would get like a message through or like a text through, and it would be from someone that was, really concerned and like asking if we're okay. And like, we didn't know at the time that on the national news, they were showing these videos of, the damage, which was, pretty frightening.
It was really significant.
Yeah, but they're showing all these videos and like
died.
We hadn't seen it.
Yeah.
And so we didn't really know.
Yeah, we were kind of like, we're fine.
Yeah, like, we knew it was like bad, but we didn't know how bad it was for at least 2 or 3 days. And then, finally we're kind of like starting to get cell service again, and we're finally starting to be able to see like pictures and videos from what was happening, and it was like kind of overwhelming. They're like, oh yeah,
like nobody would ever have predicted that would happen to these mountain towns, that they would get like washed away.
Yeah.
300 miles away from the ocean.
Well, yeah, but the river, unfortunately, doesn't really like.
No, but I guess I just never thought that flooding would happen in that same way. But I guess I wanted to mention all this mostly because it's where we are now and it's where our family is. But also, if you I would recommend going to like the Blue Ridge Public Radio website to see ways to help if you're interested or you're able, or even donating to places that are helping people like right now on the ground. Like the Community Foundation of Western North Carolina is a good nonprofit, but there's lots and lots that will benefit specific cities and specific counties. But yeah, the Western North Carolina region right now is hurting. So that's been kind of hard to, I guess that's another reason why we haven't said any updates, because the past couple weeks have been a little chaotic.
Yeah, definitely the past week and a half has been a little crazy.
We're in such a better position than most people, but yeah.
Yeah.
But back to Japan news, Ishikawa, the Noto Peninsula, can't catch a break because, speaking of flooding, they also had flooding at the end of September. So September 21st, there was a flood that killed 14 people and created a bunch of landslides, mudslides. And it's, of course, the same region that suffered the earthquake damages. And so some of the really heartbreaking videos were flooding that was happening in the temporary houses that had been built for people that were evacuating the Noto earthquake areas.
Which is kind of shocking that we're, 9 months out, almost 10 months,
and they're
people
still
are
in temporary
living,
housing.
Yeah, in temporary housing, or people are still, the infrastructure there is still so bad that people haven't been able to, really travel around or, make it home. And, I don't know, it's pretty rough. But, yeah, and then to flood on top of that was, it was kind of a tragic, scenario all around.
But Japan has a new prime minister, so as of just 5 days ago, on October 1st, Shigeru Ishiba replaced Fumio Kishida, and actually the first place that he visited in his new role was the Noto Peninsula because of the flooding.
Yeah. And I was reading this article because that was kind of apparently a contentious thing because he's asking for elections to be held, and apparently one of the people that would eventually be running against the new prime minister was pointing out that you're asking for these elections to be held and you just went to a place that you're asking them to have local elections. And do you think that they're in a position where they can have elections or worry about politics? So some people were saying he's maybe a little crass, I guess. I don't know. But
I guess it's only been 5 days, so
yeah,
we'll see how it goes. But yeah, that was kind of cool to see that Noto is getting a little bit of love. It needs a lot of love this year.
I know. It's definitely, I always think about Noto because that was, our first bike trip when we were living in Japan. And
well, yeah, and we lived,
such
at
a
the
nice
base
area.
of the peninsula.
Yeah.
So hopefully, if you're listening to this in the future, maybe Noto has been built back and reopened for tourism, and it's a really beautiful coastal area that you should go visit.
Yeah, and not hard to reach from Tokyo. In fact, you can even fly to Noto. There's Noto Airport.
So yeah, this is probably goodbye for now. I mean, since we don't have any life abroad adventures to navigate, I don't know that there's any point in us chatting, just about how life is, our daily mundane American adventures. But
yeah, we can tell you all about Hendersonville, North Carolina.
I do appreciate you indulging our, rambling. And it's been fun to kind of document, and surprising when people do listen and email us about things. And I'm grateful for even just people that have emailed us, and we've kind of started maybe friendship is too strong of a word, but
relationship.
I don't know people, and this is kind of a one-way thing where I just talk into a microphone and then you listen to it, but it's fun when people do email and then you kind of have this back and forth and connection over I don't know, everybody's just living their lives, and sometimes they overlap in cool ways.
Yeah, and especially it was fun always hearing about, people that were visiting Japan, and they would send us a message and tell us about what they were doing, or, yeah, it was very interesting.
Yeah, but if you stay subscribed to this podcast, then we might drop in occasionally, and maybe we'll do some episodes about what the rebuilding process is like for Western North Carolina, or, maybe if we move abroad again in the future. And of course I want to visit Japan as much as we can. There's a lot of bike packing trips that I want to do, so if we do those, we'll come back on and chat about how that went.
Yeah, I'm sure we will. But yeah, I don't know what we'll do kind of going forward kind of with our podcasting platform. I think that we'll probably figure out some way to use it, but it might not be the same or
Yeah, so this is a good natural end for now, and I
You
appreciate
consider this the end of season 1
Yeah,
of
season
Rambling
1.
Ramsbothams. Only 118 episodes long or whatever it is.
Yeah, but if you have any suggestions or things that you'd like to hear about, you can email us at ramblingramsbothams@gmail.com.
Yeah, and we might not be as connected to Japan, but of course if you have a question, if you're listening to a past episode or you just had a question about something we did in Japan, we're always happy to go back and think about what we were doing and reply or give some advice. But yeah.
Oh, do you have a word of the week? We should end it on a little throwback.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
So my word is nichijo.
I can see the 2 kanji, and the first one is sun, but I don't know the second one.
So nichijo means everyday. Not like Mainichi, but everyday, like commonplace. Like
what about like
in everyday or like daily life.
Oh.
And I just thought it was fitting because
Like ordinary?
yeah, we're kind of returning. We were living a very mundane life in Japan to begin with, but now we're kind of returning to our mundane lives here in North Carolina. And so we're kind of resuming kind of our everyday like routines. I mean, once things kind of settle back down to like normal, but yeah, but it's not something I'm necessarily like upset about or like sad about. I think it's very like comforting to kind of have like everyday stuff going on, and kind of like in Japan when we lived a very mundane life, but yeah, there's like a lot of comfort kind of in the everyday. So yeah, nichijo.
Well, my word is henka, which is the concept of change. And so I picked that one because there's been a lot of change in the past couple months, just like moving from Japan, moving back to the US, and then changing our minds kind of about like moving to the Netherlands or not. But then it was kind of cool to, I always think that just the differences between Japanese and English are so interesting because we put a lot of meaning into the word change, like a lot of different ways you can use that. But henka is just like the concept of change, like change or transformation, but then if you wanted to use it as a verb, the verb to change yourself is kawaru, and to change something else is kaeru, and that's the same pronunciation as returning home or frog.
Yeah, well, like the frogs.
Yeah, it's different kanji, so if you were reading it, it's different, but
It always comes back to the frogs.
yeah, does it?
Yeah, kind of. Maybe we're just frog people.
But yeah, henka is change.
Yeah.
But thanks for listening, and we'll be back some point, so this won't be our last sign-off, I guess.
We're still here. We're just not really living in a very exciting life that we feel like we need to document on the podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, but thanks for indulging us for 2 years, over 2 years of podcasts and
I know.
rambling, and it's been fun.
It's been a good time.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk to you guys later.
Yeah. Talk to you later on. Thanks for listening.